How's it going, everyone? I hope you all are having a wonderful day. I'm AMS, and about a week ago, Teat Kobo released this image of the original captains of the Gotei 13, and I ended up missing it because I was busy distracted following all of the news for the release of the new Pokemon series, and at the time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to get it, and even if I did, I wasn't sure which version I would want to get. So I was following all the news that was coming out right before its release, and in the end, I did decide to get it, and I went with Violet over Scarlet because I thought the whole future aesthetic with Violet was so much better than the whole ancient aesthetic with Scarlet. And you know what? I've been having a blast playing it. You know what? We're not here to talk about Pokemon. We're here to talk about Shinigami. So for this video, I decided to analyze each squad and try to figure out which one of these captains will best fit with that squad. And to do that, I looked up all of the significant members as well as each of the squad individual insignia, the meaning of the insignia, as well as their colors. And now, while doing this research, which by the way, most of this research was done on the Bleach fandom Wikipedia, and it was actually kind of difficult because most of the significant members were described as being kind-hearted and caring individuals, while the original captains were described by Yuha as being no more than bloodthirsty thugs, which of course included Yamamoto and Unohana as well. So when the character's personality didn't really match with them, I instead decided to focus on the insignia and the color, because as we can see, a lot of these captains have distinct colors for their hilts, so I thought maybe the color of their hilt could match up to the squad's color, but that sort of like doesn't work because at least 3 of these captains have purple colored hilts, and from what we could see here, there's only 2 squads that have distinct purple colors as their division color. So that theory was thrown out right away. So instead I focused on the characters and the insignia as well to sort of help me figure out which captain belonged to which squad. So to start, let's get the ones we know out of the way. For example, squad 1 we know is led by Genryusai Shigekuni Yamamoto. Their insignia is this is hard to pronounce, hold on. Chrysanthemums, which signifies truth and innocence, and their color is a deep purple. So from what we know, Yamamoto was the head of the Shinigami school 2,100 years ago, and around that time, Chojuro Sasakibe became his right-hand man, and then roughly 1,000 years ago, the Gotei 13 was founded, which was around the same time the war with the Quinchis was held. Now, we don't know if the Gotei 13 was formed as a result of that war. It could have been formed before, during, or after it. It hasn't been stated which it was yet. Another thing we know about Yamamoto is that he once told Sunshui that the poster of the man covered in flames in his office was that of a monster that appeared during a difficult situation, and if it ever returned, it will mark Yamamoto's last day as a Shinigami, which means he knew if he ever used his Bankai again, he was probably going to end up dying. So from that, we can see that Yamamoto was originally a really cold-hearted and bloodthirsty person, but he was also a caring person, seeing as he was the head instructor for the Shinigami Academy. But we also know he was very insightful because he knew the moment he would need to use his Bankai would probably mark the end of his life. The other captain that we would know of would be the captain of Squad 11, Yachiru Unohana, the first Kenpachi. Their insignia would be the Yado, which signifies fighting, and its division color is lavender. So what we know about Unohana is that she is the most diabolical criminal in the history of the Soul Society. She was also one of the founding members of the Gotei 13 alongside Yamamoto. Now this is something I didn't know, and that Unohana at some point became bored with fighting until she fought against a young Kenpachi Sadaki, who reignited her love of fighting, but despite her winning, she realized that the young Sadaki was stronger, but he was holding back so he can make the fight last longer so he could have more fun. And she had stated if that he were to go all out, he would be far more worthy of the title of Kenpachi than her, and that is why she stepped down as the captain of the 11th squad. I didn't know that. I had thought that Unohana was starting to value life, and that's why she stepped down as the head of the 11th squad, and it's also the same reason she spared Kenpachi's life. But according to the wiki, no, that wasn't the case. It's just that she was bored with fighting and she thought Zadaki was more worthy of the title Kenpachi. Alright, now let's start analyzing the other squads, starting with the second squad. Its insignia is the Pask flower or Paskoi, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and its meaning is seek nothing, and their squad's color is a dark orange. So this one was kind of an easy one, but I'm still gonna go through all my notes to show why. So we know the leader of the second squad also leads the stealth force, and we also know the former captain Yuruichi was the 22nd head of the Shioin clan, and then she became the head of the stealth corps, and that was actually before she became the captain of the second division. Now when she became the head of both, she united both of them under one squad, and it was stated in the wiki that this was traditionally done by the Shioin clan. And so anytime the wiki mentioned something was traditionally done, I'm assuming it was something that the first captain did. So with that, it was pretty obvious to tell because the Shioin clan is the only dark-skinned clan in all of the Seirei. And who's the only dark-skinned person here? That's right, it's Mr. Shioin himself. By the way, I gave all of the captains their own nicknames to help me sort of introduce them. And for this one, it's Mr. Shioin, the only dark-skinned person there. So it's kind of obvious he's the head of the Shioin clan, and traditionally Additionally, the Shioen clan unifies the second squad along with the Stealth Corps, so it's easy to say he's the head of the second squad. Now, this is not the case for the other noble clans, because it could have been possible one member was a lieutenant for one squad, and then got promoted to a captain of another. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because Isshin Shiba, who was a member of the Shiba's clan's branch family, was captain of Squad 10, while Cayenne Shiba, who was technically the unofficial head of the Shiba clan, was the lieutenant of Squad 13. So seeing how two members of the Shiba clan were part of different squads, it could be possible that throughout history, the different clan members were part of different squads, and one took over as head, while another one became a captain, and vice versa. So we can't say for sure that a single clan had headed a squad for the entire time. Now for Squad 3, its insignia is the marigold, which signifies despair, and its color was spring green. Unlike the second squad, which typically would run the stealth force, the third squad had no special duties, which was honestly the case for a lot of these squads, so I'm not going to mention each of them. I just might mention it for a few of them. So, the current captain of Squad 3 is Rojado Otoribashi, whose nickname is Rose, so I'm just going to refer to him as that. It's just going to be easier for me. So, Rose has a laid-back personality. He's interested in music, and he has a flair for the dramatic, due to him stating how humans typically band together against a common enemy. And that's not all. He also talks about like how him and his guitar are weeping when he learned of Kita's death, so we know he's a pretty dramatic captain. Speaking of Kita, Hizuru Kita was a former lieutenant, and we know him to be a gloomy and kind of edgy character. He typically doesn't communicate well with others, but he is loyal to his friends and duty, but he's more loyal to his duty, as we see when he fights against Momo and Rangiku during the Soul Society arc. But he does call himself a monster afterwards because he felt like he betrayed his friends. Also, something interesting about him, apparently he likes writing and reading haikus. That's something else that's a little bit on the dramatic side, because we only know edgy or dramatic people like reading and writing poems. He believes the essence of war is despair, which is what his squad's insignia stands for. And next up is the former captain, Gini Chimaru. We know he's sarcastic and enjoys mocking people. We've seen him display this multiple times during the Soul Society arc, most significant one being against Rukia when she was being taken to be executed. He asked her if she wants him to save her, giving her a brief bit of hope, but then he went around and said, "I'm just joking," and he had no intentions of helping her out. And of course, this mocking personality was typical of him, so most people didn't really trust him because he gave off an air of being like an evil or inhumane dude. And of course, he himself was aware of this. He knew what people thought of them, and he used that to toy with them. So based off of these members of Squad 3, we can assume that the first captain had a flair for the dramatic, was a bit sarcastic and mocking, as well as being really edgy. So based off of that, there are 3 captains here I could associate that with. The face paint dude, because he sort of comes off as being someone who has a flair for the dramatic, and the whole face paint thing is giving off a kabuki actor type of vibe. However, he doesn't appear to be all that edgy, or even be like the type of person who gives off an air of despair. And so I quickly eliminated him, and I started looking towards this shy guy all the way on the right, because he's sort of like giving off that edgy, sort of like enjoys writing and reading haiku type of vibe. However, he doesn't seem to be giving off a sort of like flair for the dramatic type of vibe. So again, I had to eliminate him, and the only one who sort of gave off a sort of dramatic, edgy, and despair vibe would be the ghost looking dude in the front. He clearly looks like a scary dude who would probably have a flair for the dramatic, and of course is incredibly edgy, and would be the ideal sense of despair, which matches the insignia perfectly. So for Squad 3, it's Ghost Dude. Next up, Squad 4, which as we all know is the Healing Squad. Their insignia is the Bellflower, which stands for those who grieve are loved, and their color is puce, which is kind of like a dusky pink. Squad 4 has the duty of being the relief squad. They handle medication and supplies. Their entire thing is healing people and then taking care of manual labor throughout the Seirei. Their former captain would be Retsu Unohana, and as we know, Retsu Unohana was taught by Tenijiro Kirinji, who is a part of the Royal Guard or Squad 0. I had originally thought he was the first captain of Squad 4, but nobody here looks like him. But just because he wasn't the first captain of Squad 4 doesn't mean he wasn't one of the previous captains. So I did decide to research him a bit to see if I can match one of his personalities to any one of these captains. And as we know, he has a bit of a cocky personality because he continually patronizes the captains. But then again, he has a reason to be because of how powerful his healing abilities are. And then we have Unohana, who has a gentle and warm personality. She's very polite, except when she's fighting, specifically Kenpachi, because as we know, she was the first Kenpachi and the head of Squad 11. So she had a very bloodthirsty personality before she left the squad. Another significant member would be Sanosuke Yamada, who was her former lieutenant for Squad 4, not Squad 11. And for those of you who don't know, Sanosuke Yamada was a very talented healer, and he was also very arrogant and very cocky. And the only person he really showed any sign of respect was Unohana because her healing ability was greater than his. He was someone who desperately wanted to become a captain, and he believed his skills warranted it. But when a captain position was opened up and he didn't receive it, he left the Seirei only to come back as a member of the Seijin Council as a member of its medical division, which by the way, the Seijin Council worked directly for the 4 great noble clans. So from what I can associate with Squad 4, they tend to be very arrogant and cocky, except for Unohana. But then again, we can't really associate Unohana's personality with the original Gotei 13 because they are all known as bloodthirsty thugs. Now, as to which one of these guys gave off a sort of like cocky and arrogant personality, to be honest, there are several of them who I can state. One being this purple haired girl right in the front. There's also the shaded guy in the back. There's also the face paint guy. They all come off as very arrogant and cocky. So I decided to focus on the color and see which one of these captains had a dusky pink aesthetic to them, and that's what led me to Pinky over here. But then I started to think that her character design doesn't really match with the meaning of the bellflower, the insignia of Squad 4, which symbolizes those who grieve are loved. And she isn't really giving off that vibe. She doesn't have an air of grieving or someone who's lost something, or even someone who wants to be loved. And I felt that only one person was giving off that sort of edgy / lonely vibe, while also still possibly having an arrogant personality. And that would be the shy guy on the right. He seems to be the type of person who's like feeling despair and seeking love, which is why the bellflower will make the most sense as his insignia. And I can still make the case for him being arrogant, because he's the only captain who's not looking towards the front, which could imply that he thinks he's better than all of them. So he's not doing the same thing they're all doing. But it could also mean that he's just shy and that's why he's not facing the front. So he could kind of be like that stoic character who's both cool and yet cold to other people. But that doesn't necessarily mean he isn't arrogant. As a matter of fact, those type of characters who have that personality tend to be arrogant on top of it. Granted, the squad's color dusky pink matched up with Pinky's aesthetic more, hence why I called her Pinky. But the insignia felt so much closer to his, that's why I had to give him the title of Squad 4 captain. Next up is Squad 5, and their insignia is the Lily of the Valley, which stands for sacrifice, danger, pure love, humility, and sweetness. Their color is a pale turquoise. Now I have to say this, the Lily of the Valley has such a deep meaning. There are a couple of captains who I could associate with it. But let's focus on the key members of the squad first before I start naming some of them off. The current captain is Shinji Hirako, and we know Shinji is sort of a comical and teasing person. We know he enjoys teasing Hiyori Sarugaki, but he cares for her and the other visors deeply. We know this because when they were on the run from the Seirei, he took charge and kept them safe. We also know he is a very perceptive person, immediately recognizing something is up with his lieutenant Sosuke Aizen. Speaking of which, we know Aizen is incredibly intelligent, manipulative, and cunning. However, he does speak in a very polite fashion, but despite that, he is very uncaring. He typically would kill a bunch of his subordinates with little to no hesitation. And also, he kidnapped Orihime when he thought her ability was unique and something he wanted to research, but the moment he lost interest, he threw her away like she was nothing. He is calm in most situations, however, there are certain points where he's sort of like surprised, but then quickly gets over it. Like when Momo first showed up at Fake Karakura. Now, based off of this, I couldn't really associate any one of these guys with clearly being like deceptive, manipulative, or even teasing. Especially because we know all of them were bloodthirsty thugs, so a lot of them could match that easily. So going back to the color and the insignia, for the color, none of these captains look like they have anything that's a pale turquoise. So focusing on the insignia, we know the Lily of the Valley has a very deep meaning to it. I also had to look this up, but apparently the Lily of the Valley is a very poisonous flower. And it also apparently signifies the return of happiness. So having such a very deep meaning, but also being a very dangerous flower, leads me to believe there are two people here who give off that vibe. Mr. Shades in the back, because he seems to be like a deep yet very serious person. And this creepy old dude hiding behind these other captains. And I was pretty much going back and forth between the two, but I decided to settle on the creepy old guy. And that is because the Lily of the Valley has such a significant meaning that it probably came from someone very wise and with a lot of experience. It was kind of giving an old person vibe to it, so I assumed whoever was the oldest among these captains had to be captain of Squad 5. And this creepy old dude being the oldest among the captains here fits the bill for a wise elderly person who would choose the Lily of the Valley as his squad's insignia. And because of that, I decided to name him the captain of Squad 5. And now for Squad 6. Their insignia is the Camilla, which means noble reason, and their color is cobalt blue. So just based off of the color alone, I was thinking maybe it's this arm guard guy right over here. Because he has distinct blue arm guards and a hilt on his sword, he was my first guess. But I think there's another captain here who would more accurately fit the bill as captain of Squad 6. And that's based off the current captain of the squad. And the captain is Byakuya Kuchiki. And we also know his grandpa, Ginrei Kuchiki, was also the captain. Now we know the Kuchiki clan is a very noble clan, and they tend to show off their wealth, as we see with both Byakuya and Ginrei having like very fancy clothes, including a fancy scarf, which is apparently very expensive, and it can buy like, what, 13 mansions in the Serite alone with how much that scarf is worth? So now we know that the two previous captains of the division were members of the Kuchiki clan. Now that doesn't mean that the captains of this squad were always members of the Kuchiki clan. However, there were other members of the clan who held prominent positions, one of which being Sujin Kuchiki, Byakuya's father. He was the lieutenant under Ginrei, but he passed away while he was still a lieutenant. And similarly to Byakuya, he had long black hair. Now we don't know if Ginrei also had black hair, because by the time we were introduced to him, he was already an old man and his hair had turned white. But seeing as how his son and grandson all had black hair, we can assume that he himself probably did as well. Now seeing as how the 6th division had 3 generations of Kuchikis a part of it, as well as the fact that the Kuchiki clan is a very noble clan who respect tradition, I can make the case that the Kuchiki clan had always led the 6th division, and they simply would recruit their own children to join them and have them hold prominent positions, including that of the lieutenant. And if another captain position opened up, not only would they not recommend them to take up that position, they would adamantly tell them to not pursue it and simply wait for them to either pass away or retire so they themselves can become the captain of the 6th division. With that in mind, I believe the captain here who led the 6th division would have to be Fancy Hat Dead Eyes over here. The reason I call him that is because he's wearing a very neatly and well kept hat while also having eyes that have bags under them, implying that he's sort of like nearly dead or like very sleep deprived. And the reason I'm associating him with the Kuchiki clan is because, well, the fancy hat as well as the black hair. Granted, there are some other captains here who have long black hair, one of which being Unohana, the other being the girl in the glasses over here. However, this guy's the only one who seems to like care about his appearance, having the very nice hat on. And the fact is, he's a Shinigami who's bloodthirsty and probably very violent, yet he has a very well kept hat on that's not like damaged or tarnished, so if it did get damaged or tarnished in a fight, he would probably mend it right away because he cares about his appearance. At least that's what I'm assuming. Despite these being only assumptions, I truly believe he is the head of the Kuchiki clan as well as the captain of the 6th division. Now for Squad 7, their insignia is the iris, which stands for courage, and their color is a dark tan. Their current captain is Tetsuzaemon Iba. Iba has a hobby of collecting sunglasses. He has a tattoo of a cat on fire with the kanji of inviting luck on him. He kind of has this Yakuza aesthetic to him, and because of that, I was kind of looking at which one of these guys kind of resembles a Yakuza member. There are a few, but before I start labeling them off, I want to talk about the other significant members first. But before that, we also know Iba was a former member of Squad 11, so he enjoys fighting. However, since he's not part of Squad 11 anymore, he's kind of taken to the habit of fighting for his squad, so he is willing to retreat if it would save his life, instead of fighting to the death like a member of Squad 11 would. Now, a former captain of the squad would be Sajin Kamamura, the dog spirit man. He's loyal to Yamamoto, and grateful for him taking him in when no one else would. A lot of people hated him, but Yamamoto was the only one who showed him any kindness and accepted him into the Gotei 13. We also know he's a very forgiving person, and he's not really a tough or a cruel captain. He's very forgiving and polite to his squad members. And then the last significant member of the squad will be Atui Rindo, who is the current lieutenant. We know he's deaf and he has a fondness for animals, but he also doesn't take offense for people not knowing how to communicate with him. So from this squad, we have a couple of things. We have like forgiveness, kindness, and caringness, which doesn't really work for these current captains because again, they're bloodthirsty thugs. However, each of these significant members had something related to each other. Iba has a tattoo of a cat, Komamura is a dog spirit, and Atui has a fondness for animals. So each of these have some sort of animal aesthetic to them. Now, looking at these captains, which one of them looks like they have some type of animal fondness? Honestly, there's only one clear-cut answer, but I kind of want to go through my thought process. So first off, the Yakuza aesthetic I mentioned earlier, two of them stood out, and that's the purple hair girl in the front, just because she has that eye patch, which is kind of giving off a sort of a Yakuza vibe. There's the shaded person in the back, because like, you know, the shades and the slick back hair, again, is giving off Yakuza vibes, but only one person here has like an animal aesthetic to him, and that would be Teethy McTheeth. He has the shades and the bald head, which also gives off the Yakuza vibe. He also has a jagged sword, which looks incredibly menacing. There's also the fact that he has teeth for lips, which adds to his bestial aesthetic, but he also has several scars on him, one on his forehead and two across his chest, which emphasizes that Yakuza vibe I was talking about earlier. Now, I know he gives off more of a gangster feel rather than a bestial or animal impression, but I still feel like he best would fit as the captain for Squad 7. Next up is Squad 8. Their insignia is the Sterilitzia, which is also known as the Bird of Paradise. It stands for everything is obtained, and their color is raspberry rose. Their current captain is is Lisa Yadomaru. She's a common, sensible person, but she's also stern and detached. She focuses more on the logical side of things rather than the emotional, but she is easily irritated. She has a hobby of collecting and reading erotic material. We've even seen her give those erotic materials to Ichigo before, which he politely declined. We know she has a curious personality from when she used to be Shunsui's former lieutenant and would spy on the captain's meeting. She also has a playful side and she's a bit of a jokester. She is close to Shunsui to the point that they would share mutual advantages towards each other. And then of course there's Shunsui Kyoraku, who was the former captain. We know he has a laid-back and flamboyant personality. He is peace-loving but will fight to preserve the Soul Society. And his former lieutenant was Nanao Issei. Unlike the former two, she is a very serious and pragmatic person. She would get annoyed at having to deal with her captain's antics, but still held a great amount of respect for him. She was known for keeping her division organized and well maintained. Her hobbies include shopping and reading. And then the current lieutenant is Yuyu Yayahara. As we know, she's obsessed with Gyaru culture, to the point she actually artificially altered her hair and skin. We know she's very active on social media, having taken pictures with Ichigo and posted it on there. She's pretty carefree and cheerful even while fighting. So based off of this, almost every single significant person from this squad has sort of like a carefree and cheerful personality, excluding Nanao. Just based off of that, there really isn't anyone on here that looks carefree. Maybe Glass is over here on the left, but the fact is she has a giant spear, so I wouldn't say like a giant spear is someone who's like rather carefree. She just seems more like indifferent. So seeing how like I can't really associate any one of these with that personality, I decided to focus on the insignia, which is everything is obtained, as well as the color raspberry rose. So out of these captains, there's only two who I can really associate with everything is obtained, and that would be Mr. Facepaint's up there on the left and the purple haired girl right here in the front. And so Facepaint over here does seem to be like the greedy, wants to obtain everything type of character. However, he doesn't seem like the type of person who would want to have a raspberry rose for his squad's color. And so because of that, I have to give the title of Captain of Squad 8 to Pinky over here. Like, raspberry rose seems more fit for her color, and she would be like the type of person who wants to obtain everything. And with her being at the forefront here, it kind of gives off the impression that she enjoys being in the spotlight, and that she may be the type of person who hogs all the fame and glory to herself and reap all the rewards and leave nothing for anyone else. And with that assumption, I believe she matches the insignia everything is obtained much better than Facepaint guy. Next up is Squad 9. Their insignia is the white poppy, which stands for Oblivion, and their color is Tene, which is kind of like an orange-brown color. Now this is one of the squads that actually has a duty, and they are the security force for the Serite, so they are always on standby and ready for battle. And traditionally, they have overseen arts and culture. Based off of that, I've narrowed this down to two possible captains, one being Blue Guard over here, and the other one being the Shades in the back. They both seem like the type of people who are raring for a fight, but also would appreciate culture and art. So in order to decide between the two of them, I had to take a look at the significant members. The first one being the captain, Kentei Muguruma. He is a serious and decisive person, and he also has a short temper. He tries to act kind, but his temper tends to get in the way of that. And his lieutenant is Shuhei Hisagi, who's a mature, calm, and virtuous person. He dislikes violence, but he won't hesitate to take someone's life in a fight. He does prefer to save someone rather than kill someone, which we've seen in Camp for Your Own World. We see that the whole reason his Shikai was in the form of a sight because he tried to live the ideal Soul Reaper life, but that wasn't the type of person he was. He was a person who would rather save someone than kill them. And so his Shikai transformed into his true form, which was the chains. The chains are what saved his life on multiple occasions. If he ever got hurt or cut, the chains would come together and heal his wound. And his sort of peaceful side gets emphasized with his Bankai. His Bankai turns him and his opponent into immortals, so every time one of them gets wounded, they get healed, but his opponent's ki gets absorbed and they get weakened because of it. So his Bankai forces them into a stalemate where they can't fight. Even if they do, his opponent will just keep getting weaker to the point that they collapse. Now, the next significant member I wanted to talk about, Mashido Kuna, who is the co-lieutenant for the squad. She forcefully became the co-lieutenant just so she could work under Kensei. She has a childish and immature personality and doesn't pay attention when people are talking to her. And she also tends to throw a fit when she doesn't get her way. And now finally, Kaname Tosin, the former captain. We know he prefers to follow the path with the least bloodshed, but despite of that, he became a Shinigami to pursue justice against the Soul Society, and he knows his desire for justice conflicts with his ideal of traveling the path with the least bloodshed. So he decided that living a peaceful life without avenging the death of someone he cared for would be evil. We also know his hobbies are cooking and writing articles for the Serete Bulletin, and we know his original articles used to be about justice, which were unpopular, so he started writing articles about recipes he's made up, and those became very very popular, especially among the female Shinigamis. So based off of this, we could associate Squad 9 with people who enjoy protecting, who are very strong, but have a strong sense of justice. So based off of this, I can confidently say that the captain of Squad 9 had to be Blue Guard. And the reason I'm picking Blue Guard over Shaded Guy in the back is because the Shaded Guy in the back doesn't seem to be like the type of person who has a strong sense of justice. He seems to be more of like, I will get the job done under any means necessary. While Blue Guard's over here seems the type of person who would rather want to protect people rather than just straight up kill him. And the reason I'm saying this is because he has guards on his wrist, which could signify the idea of protecting people rather than hurting them. Granted, he is holding his sword with a reverse grip, which is also more of a defensive grip rather than an attacking grip. So it goes to show that he wants to defend himself rather than kill his opponent. Or it could be that he's trying to stab someone in the back, which also works for the Shinigami way, because they are instructed to not fight honorably and instead attack their opponent from behind to minimize the risk of death. Which again could work for the whole idea of defending, because that division's duty is security. So attacking someone from behind increases the chances of protecting their allies. And now for Squad 10. Their insignia is the daffodil, which stands for mystery and egoism. Their squad's color is dark green. Their current captain is Toshiro Hitsugaya, who is a mature, serious, and hardworking person. He typically gets annoyed when he sees people goofing off, but he will still put in the work to make up for their laziness. His lieutenant is Rangiku Matsumoto. Contrary to her captain, she's someone who enjoys slacking off and drinking. She's very easygoing but sensitive to other people's emotions. Despite their contradictory personalities, they get along very well. And their former captain was Ishin Shiba, who is fun-loving, energetic, loud, lazy, and carefree while he was a captain. But he still takes good care of his subordinates, despite him pushing his work onto them. So from this we can tell that Squad 10 has a very familial culture where each squad members will take care of each other, despite them having conflicting personalities. Now this was very hard for me to decide, but in the end, I felt that the captain that would probably have the most familial personality had to be a little miss in the glasses. She kind of has an indifferent facial expression, but she also seems like the person who is like the least angry amongst them, so she would probably have the most familial personality. Also, the fact is she's wielding a spear, which means she prefers fighting at a distance, which means her goal isn't necessarily to attack someone from behind, but to rather face them head on, but not put herself in danger, which is very similar to how all the other members of Squad 10 fight. Hitsugaya has ice-related Zanbakuto, so he would fight at a distance using the cold as his weapon. Rangiku fights using ashes, so she also fights at a distance. Ishin Zanbakuto has the ability to store energy and shoot it out, so every single member tends to fight from a distance. And the fact is, her Zanbakuto is the only one that's released, so Kubo wanted us to focus on her spear. And like I stated, the spear is used to fight at a distance, so honestly that fits perfectly with Squad 10's style. And now we're down to the last two. We only have Mr. Facepaint and Shades in the back. And the next squad up is Squad 12. Their insignia is the Thistle, which stands for vengeance, strictness, and independence. Their color is olive green. So we know Squad 12 is linked to the Research and Development Institute, but that was created by Kisuke Urohara, so none of these guys will be associated with it. Now their current captain is Mayuri Kurotsuchi, who is research obsessed, cruel, and cold-hearted. He is also a former criminal, who is perfectly described as a mad scientist. He has no respect for life, everything is a research subject, including himself. He tends to toy with his opponents and treats their fight as an experiment. He's even zombified deceased allies and enemies to have them continue fighting for him. His current lieutenant is Akon, who's a calm and collected individual. He is willing to take control of the squad without the captain's permission, which shows great leadership in the time of conflict. He's one of the few people who gets along with Mayuri due to his scientific mind, and he's even called Nemu Mayuri's greatest masterpiece. One of the former captains of the squad is Kirio Hikifune, who is a cheerful and motherly character. She's known to maintain her demeanor even when lashing out. She tends to keep her teammates in check and even picks up the slack for them. She's well known for creating the artificial soul or the soul candy, which got her promoted to Squad 0. After she got promoted, that's when Kisuke Urohara took over. He tends to have a laid-back personality and tends to be optimistic. He's also known to be one of the most intelligent people in all of the Soul Society, next to Aizen of course, and he's also very perceptive, always being aware of the situation, even when he isn't in the current location. He tends to act carefree, but will act serious when it's called for. One of the former lieutenants of the squad will be Nemu Kurotsuchi. She is a shy and withdrawn person due to Mayuri's abuse. Despite this, she was still loyal to him, willing to follow his orders even to the point of getting herself severely injured. She's also been shown to be very obedient, following the orders of President of the Shinigami's Women's Association, Yachido Kusajishi, who ordered her to build a secret tunnel and hide out on the Kuchiki estate. which by the way, she did enjoy doing. So now we can associate Squad 12 with people who are very confident, caring, and incredibly intelligent. And their insignia stands for vengeance, strictness, and independence. Now, which of these two best associates with that? The one I chose was face paint, mainly because that arrogant smile is sort of showing off like someone who's very confident in themselves and possibly very intelligent. Now, shades in the back does also give off an air of intelligence, but I went with face paint mainly because Mayuri Kuretsuchi also has face paint. I couldn't help but associate the two together. Also, he kind of looks like a researcher. I don't know what it is. It could be just a confident smile that's sort of giving off like an intuitive look to him, which is why I couldn't help but make him the captain of Squad 12. And now finally, Squad 13, which there's only one option here, but I still wanted to go through my notes and tell you why I think he still fits as the captain of Squad 13. So their insignia is the snowdrop, which stands for hope. Their color is maroon, which is a dark red color. Their current captain is Rukia Kuchiki, who's modest and graceful, but has a cool and lone demeanor, which forces her to keep to herself and hide her personal problems. We also know she likes rabbits, which is depicted throughout her art. Her former captain is Jushiro Ukitake, who was well respected and highly honorable. He has a high moral code, which causes him to break the rules if he believed what he was doing was right. He also was very good at judging people, being one of the first people to suspect Aizen's treacherous nature, I should say. His former lieutenant was Kaien Chiba, who was ethical, outspoken, and down to earth, but he also had a strong sense of duty. So based off of this, we could associate Squad 13 with people who like inspire people and were like very serious and honorable people. Based off of the two previously mentioned characters, Face Paint and Shades in the Back, I felt like Shades in the Back was more of the honorable type, just because of like his stern look made me think like he'd be honorable and like serious and like loyal to his duty and have a high moral code. So I felt like he fit the mold for captain of Squad 13 better than Face Paint did. And with that, that's all 13 squads down. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with my choices? Do you disagree? Do you think there were some better options? Do you think one captain fit the mold better than the other? Or if you just want to call me an idiot and say this video sucks, fine by me. I wouldn't mind. But with all that out of the way, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and remember to keep having fun. See ya!